Hi there, and welcome to my JNUC 2022 talk on Bootstrap Tokens, secure tokens, and volume ownership. My name is Ben Toms, Head of Innovation of Platform at DataJar. You might also know me as Manuel. So today's talk, we're going to go through secure tokens, Bootstrap tokens, and volume ownership. No surprises there, it was in the title. But the idea here is that there's a journey and there's a reason for this, and you'll kind of get that at the end, hopefully. And at the very end itself, we're going to do a recap on all the things that we've gone through. So for the talk itself, there's various different links that I reference, and they're all available in this GitHub repo, and this will also be shown at the recap at the very end as well. So that's datajar/JNUC 2022. So let's get started. So we start our journey off with secure tokens. And secure tokens came about with so when researching this, sorry, I have to edit that, unfortunately. Back again. So researching this talk, I came across this KB, which is, when you first read the title, you think, actually, this is going to be exactly what's needed for this, and I could have maybe have done nothing else and just linked to this KB itself. In fact, digging into it, whilst there's some great tidbits in there, there is actually some stuff that we need to investigate and wasn't quite matching up with what Apple said. But let's look at the great detail first. So when it comes to secure tokens, they came about with Apple File System, APFS, in macOS 10.13. And with APFS volumes, encryption keys are generated either during the user creation, setting the first user's password, or during login of a user into a Mac. The secure token is wrapped. There's a wrapped version of a key encryption key. Now, I kept that in there in case anybody here has done ACTCs or anything like that. So you know your ticket granting ticket. It's that similar type of methodology. If that kind of helps you along with this. The bit here that was important, and the bit here that seemed to stand out to me, was that how these tokens are generated. So user creation, setting the first user password, or during the first login by a user. Well, you know, I did my own research. So for this, I set up the VMs in several different OSs. So we got from macOS 10.13 all up to macOS 12. Yes, it does annoy me that Monterey's icon isn't quite the same proportions, but that is what we've got. Within this as well, these were all Intel VMs, essentially for most of this until we get to stuff at the end. It doesn't matter, the pattern should be the same. They're enrolled into Jamf 10.39.1, which was the current version of Jamf when this was this talk was set up. All the devices were enrolled via ADE into Jamf. I created an admin during the pre-stage in ADE. Create an admin under UIE. So this would be your management account. So when you do your ADE enrollment, the UIE settings, the user initiated enrollment settings still come in. So the management account comes in that way. And that account's called Jamf admin. Create an account on the enrollment complete trigger called policy admin. And I created a user called JNUC 2020. So the idea here was me to ascertain who was getting what at what point. And that was trying to be laid out there. To see who's got what, you can go into a devices record, and if you go into a macOS devices record, inventory operating system FileVault users, it will tell you which of the user accounts, not the service accounts, which are the kind of standard user accounts as such, or the non-service accounts, sorry, have got FileVault. So this has got 1 out of 3 in this example. Similarly, inventory disk encryption for a record, FileVault to enabled users, that gives you the username of the user. And again, inventory local user accounts, FileVault to enabled, and you scroll to the right and it tells you FileVault to enabled for that user. The important thing here is, whilst the naming here says FileVault to enabled, it essentially means they have a secure token. So it's a bit misleading, but it means they have a secure token. So that's one way of verifying the record. Additionally, we've got this blog from Barnes Pavlov, BP, and he's got a couple of methods there for finding out or verifying if someone's got a secure token. So this can be handy if you're scripting certain things, certain interactions. So you've got sysadmin CTL is one method, and DSCL, Directory Services Command Line. So how did this testing go? Well, logged in as a user on High Sierra or Mojave, secure tokens. What was going on? You know, wasn't quite sure, but went through the step system. Preferences to go through. And enable FileVault. This is a standard user, so we have to be an admin to unlock the preference pane. And go in here and then click on Turn on FileVault. Go through the steps to set it up. Choose the user we want. So in here, we've logged in as Jamf admin as an example. That's why the other people are showing. Type in the user's password. And then click Continue. Now type in a password again to make the change. And the disk is now encrypting. But what's here is the user who was the admin who authenticated during that process was actually the admin who the admin itself got a secure token as well as the user. So they were both enabled for FileVault, which was a bit bizarre. Go towards more modern OSs. So this is Catalina, Big Sur, and Monterey. Do the same process, authenticate as an admin. If I turn on FileVault, button did nothing. Couldn't do anything. So even though I authenticated the preference pane as a admin, and the admin might have had a secure token, we can't actually enable FileVault here. Now, looking at that same document, Apple mentioned that with macOS 11 or later, setting the initial password for the very first user of the Mac results in that user being granted a secure token. In some workflows, that may not be desired, and as previous, granting the first secure token would have required the user account to log in. So, what are some of these changes? How would they impact you? With this, say you've got a machine on Big Sur, we create a standard user, and we kind of got a delay at the setup system. That means at this step here, wait a few minutes. Basically, long enough for that policy script to run out the enablement complete trigger. If you then investigate the record, you'll see that policy user has actually got a secure token. Proceed through, create the user account, log in system preferences, authenticate as an admin, go to turn on FileVault. You're now prompted to enter in that user, that policy admin, the one created via the Jamf policy, to enable the to basically start the encryption process. This essentially means you're giving the user who's logged in a secure token. Usual process there, as we'd see. And again, the user's details. And then we're good. Except we're not. There's still some errors. There's still some issues here. It still can't be added for some reason. And again, we know a password be entered in here. It seems like it's been enabled, but generally it's not quite for the user itself. It's weird. So basically, essentially it didn't work, is what I'm trying to get to with this one here. We go to Monterey, the same thing. We look to create a user, leave it for a few moments. The policy script kicks in, creates an admin user. That admin user gets a secure token. We log in, we create the user account, log in, put in the details, go to enable FileVault, policy admin again, screen share, because we can't progress past this screen. So what's happened here is the first user created on the system is the policy admin account. So the ADE admin, so created via the ADE pre-stage, and the user created under UIE, the management account, they seem to be avoiding this process. I don't know if it's how they're created or it's just the timing of things. But after a certain time, especially under the enablement complete trigger, those other users are being gifted that secure token if no other users exist. Now, I've put a feature request in for this. There is actually a key that you can set via DSCL to stop user accounts from getting a secure token. So if Jamf implemented this, then a policy admin account, so an account created via a policy under enablement complete, as per the pause we saw there, wouldn't get a secure token, and the first user to log in would. But this behavior of like having users in as an admin and gifting tokens as well is something that we've seen before. You cast your mind way back to macOS 10, 13, and 4, we first saw this behavior. And this is with mobile accounts, logging in, and this prompt appearing to say, please enter a secure token, administrators, details in order to be granted a secure token. Colleague, fellow Mac admins, Slack admin, and London Apple admins Cat Herder, Neil Martin documented this behavior way back in 2018. Additionally, Apple have now documented this within their managed FileVault with mobile device management KB and show that there's a key you can deploy, config profile, to disable that behavior. Additionally, within that KB, Apple state if the Mac is joined to a directory service and configured to create mobile accounts, there is no boot, and if there is no Bootstrap token, we'll get to them in a moment, Directory service users are prompted at login for an existing user's secure token administrator's username and password to grant their account a secure token. A currently secure token enabled local administrator's credentials should be entered. Bit of a mouthful. But if it's not required, you can click bypass. The interesting thing here is this is that thing again, that handover process, that key encrypting key, similar methodology as the ticket granting ticket. So essentially a administrator who's got a secure token, you enter in their details and the user logging in then gets a secure token. And with this, you see this type of process with a lapsed user on macOS 10.15 under Jamf Connect. And this is a KB where Jamf mentioned that, and it's now been kind of deprecated in older OSs. This all might make you feeling that it's all doom and gloom and this stuff's awful and we can't manage it and all this stuff. Well, it's not. It's fine, honest. With the KB again, the managing FileVault with mobile device management, Apple talk about when a user sets up a Mac on their own. With this, they're actually talking about ADE enrollment. When a user sets up a Mac on their own, ID departments don't perform any provisioning tasks on the actual device. Setup system user to create an initial local account, and the user is granted a secure token. As long as you on the pause. If a local user account creation setup system is skipped altogether using NDM, directory service with mobile accounts is used. Instead, the mobile account user is granted a secure token during login. So this is the newer OSs, but this is the type of workflow that should be working. If any of the above scenarios, because the first and primary user is granted a secure token, they can be enabled for FileVault using deferred enablement. Now, deferred enablement, which Apple go further here to say, allows the organization to turn on FileVault, but defer its enablement until the user logs in or out of the Mac. Talking about enabling FileVault via an MDM profile, basically. The end result is the primary user of the Mac, whether a local user or a type of mobile account, being able to unlock the storage device when encrypted with FileVault. Again, more details. NDM configurations or the FDE setup command line tool can be used to configure FileVault. But macOS 10.15 or later, using FDE setup to turn on FileVault by providing username and password is deprecated and won't be recognized in the future release. Goes back to our lapsed user thing with Jamf Connect, why it only works for 10.15 but hasn't worked in newer OSs. Consider using deferred enablement using MDM instead. So by this, what Apple is basically saying, enabling FileVault from 10.15 up using MDM profile. And we've got the keys there. We can enable login, logout, etc., and that should work for you. Now, on the newer OSs, it isn't just the secure token bit that actually makes this happen. A lot of the heavy lifting comes from the thing that was mentioned once prior, from Bootstrap tokens. Now, again, in that initial KB that we looked at, use a secure token, Bootstrap token, and volume ownership in deployments. Apple detail what Bootstrap tokens are about. So first of all, they came about in 10.15 or later, and it's used to help with granting secure token to both mobile accounts and optional device enrollment created administrator account, the manager administrator, the ADE admin, the one created under the brew stage. In macOS 11 or later, the Bootstrap token can grant a secure token to any user logging into a Mac computer, including local user accounts. On macOS 15.4 or later, when a user who is secure token enabled logs in for the first time, a Bootstrap token is generated and escrowed to an MDM. A Bootstrap token can be generated and escrowed to an MDM using the Profiles command line tool if needed. Now, Jamf have supported this since about Jamf 10.18, which was released 9th of Jan 2020, and you can see that within the what's new release notes for the product. So luckily enough, if you're running 10.15 and up, and you've got macOS, or you've got Jamf Pro 10.18, and you must by now, or up, you essentially, that MDM profile should just work through users log in, they get a secure token, the Bootstrap token is escrowed in the MDM, and these activities can then go through. When Jamf and Apple talk about the profiles command, there is actually a Jamf KB here called manually leveraging Apple's Bootstrap token functionality, which gives you steps about using those commands to escrow if you ever need to do it locally. However, if you go into a device record itself, inventory security Bootstrap token allowed, you can see the value there. macOS 10.11 only, so be mindful of that. On macOS 11, sorry, not 10.11, going back a few years there. But you'd also see in there the status as well, if it's escrowed or not. So additionally, in macOS 11 or later, the Bootstrap token may also be used for more than just granting secure tokens to user accounts. Device with Apple Silicon, the Bootstrap token, if available, can be used to authorize the installation of both kernel extensions and software updates when managed using MDM. The Bootstrap token is used to slightly authorize an erase of content and settings command when triggered through MDM on macOS 12.01 or later. And an example of this is where in Jamf 1031, Jamf Pro 1031, the restart device commands were enabled to also rebuild the kernel cache post-Kex installation. And also additional KBs on this around managing legacy kernel extensions, because detail how to programmatically restart using the Jamf Pro API also mentions the need of Bootstrap tokens, as well as Apple mentioning this within their enterprise management of legacy system extensions in Big Sur. What this states as well, before you can install a kernel extension on a Mac computer with Apple Silicon, the security policy must be changed in one of the following ways. If you have a device enrolled in an MDM with automatic device enrollment, you can authorize remote management of kernel extensions automatically by changing the security policy. We'll get there in a sec. The MDM must also be able to support a Bootstrap token. Additionally, the client must send the Bootstrap token to the MDM server before the MDM has tried to perform an operation that requires it. So this is what we're talking about. Jamf Pro 1018, user logs in, there's a secure token generated, the Bootstrap token is escrowed into Jamf. Now these activities can happen. And this is where Jamf's trying to do things like push down a Kex profile to a device or erase content settings, etc. It needs that Bootstrap token enabled and escrowed so it can actually do those following activities. And here's another KB talking about this as well, where we're talking about when a device is AD enrolled and either a Kex or Sex profile is pushed or a software update command via management commands, the startup security levels of the device will need to be changed. On a one-to-one home device type thing, this might need a volume ownership thing to be looked at, which we'll look at in a sec as well. But this is what the Bootstrap token allows. It allows the machine to, basically, if you boot up a Mac, you go to startup security, and you can go in here and set the security policy. This allows your MDM to do this. So you can avoid doing this step manually. So what you'll see is your devices that are ADE enrolled, they will have their security policy set to reduced. And you can again see that within the device record in Jamf. But that's because an action has been triggered that requires this. And the Bootstrap token has allowed Jamf to do this to the device. So again, you've pushed a Kex profile to a Silicon device, raise contents and settings, software update command. In order for those things to work on a Silicon device, first of all, the Bootstrap token is used, lower the security level of the device, and then the MDM commands are sent through. So I mentioned just a moment ago, volume ownership. And again, the original KB uses secure token, Bootstrap token, and volume ownership in deployments. I will say here is that the user that first claimed a Mac by configuring it for their use is granted a secure token on a Mac with Apple Silicon and becomes the first volume owner. When a Bootstrap token is in use, it also becomes a volume owner and grants volume ownership status to additional accounts as it grants them secure tokens. And because both the first user to be granted a secure token and the Bootstrap token becomes volume owners, as well as the Bootstrap token's ability to grant secure token to additional users, volume ownership should not be something that needs to be actively managed or maintained in an organization. Previous considerations for managing and granting the secure token should generally align and volume ownership status as well. So big finish, close the curtains, we're done now. This was the point, this was the journey I took you folks on. Understand how secure tokens are generated, the best way to generate them through your MDM, the Bootstrap token coming into that as well, and how that then dovetails into volume ownership when you get Apple Silicon. Essentially, if your devices are being provisioned via ADE, you're using a modern version of the OS, even going back N-2 as per the date now, and you've got a modern version of Jamf, you should essentially be covered for these. Push down your profiles for MDM via MDM to enable FileVault, etc. You should all be good to cover all these scenarios. FileVault should be enabled, Bootstrap token escrowed. You should be able to push out Kex, software update, erase content settings. All this working, irregardless of volume ownership. You shouldn't have to worry about it. Secure token starts this journey to make this easier for you as an admin. Now, this is the other thing as well. It's possible to be a volume owner and not administrator, but certain tasks require checking volume ownership of both. For example, modifying startup security settings requires both an administrator and a volume owner. A screen we saw a moment ago, the black screen. So someone booted into that to authenticate to change those settings manually would have to be an admin who's also a volume owner. And authorizing software updates is allowed by standard users. It only requires ownership. However, major Mac OS upgrades require elevated privileges to begin. Standard unit ownership can be used with the required user options using the StartOS command line tool. But for raising installs used, then it needs to be an administrator. So a few different things to unpack, but obviously with the commands and things that we've looked at, we can make sure that people are in the right place before we offer them a command line workflow to do StartOS install commands. But if you're going to do the erase and install, you might be better off doing the erase all contents and settings via MDM because the Bootstrap token is there. The MDM can do that for you. And that removes the need of someone being able to having to authenticate locally as administrator. So standard users who are volume owners won't be able to raise all content and settings, but you can hit that button via MDM. So just a recap there. A lot of information. I hope you kind of got the idea. The whole story arc of this was the fact of these are secure tokens. This is why they're relevant, even coming all the way down to volume ownership via Bootstrap tokens. But in actual fact, once you've got secure tokens figured, the rest of it should just flow through. You kind of want to know the history, though, I feel. And this will hopefully help you in your journey on there as well. So any questions, please reach out as needed. And again, thank you for listening.